morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and be part of this initiative. I think there's a lot of good that will come out of the collaboration and partnership that we see here today. And the audience, I've read through the attendee list, fantastic representation from all sectors. Today I'm going to keep it brief per instructions, and I'll limit the slides, but really the focus is the impacts that go with any large-scale mining development. And personally, I've been in Mongolia now for 4 years and been there right through the construction phase of Untitled, and now as Chief Operating Officer, operating that mine and I guess getting things stabilised both as a business but also in respect of the impacts that we've naturally created through that project. So first of all, and I'll keep this very short, I suspect that most people in the room are reasonably familiar with Untitled. It is a very large-scale copper and gold mining operation. I guess you're aware that there's two phases. The first phase is in operation now, and that's focused around an open pit mine. The second phase, which is under discussion between the shareholders, Rio Tinto, Turquoise Hill and the Government of Mongolia, is focused on a large-scale underground mine. And that's where most of the real value is and most of the future is. It's a very significant project, and the first phase, over $6 billion of investment to get it up and running. In terms of its location, it's about 600 kilometres south of Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, and about 100 kilometres from the border. And of course that is very interesting for us in that our primary customer is China, and the export market through that border is very active. It's also co-located very close to a very large coal complex, Untitled, and there's a lot of ongoing development in that region as well. So let's get on to the impacts. I'm just going to cut to the chase and run through. This is the range of impacts, and I won't be complete, I'm sure, but hit the key ones and just some highlights on each of those key impacts and how we manage them. The first and one of the most significant is water. To run a concentrator to make copper concentrate takes an inordinate amount of water. Now, to make this mine viable, regardless of the ore body, we had to find a new source of water. The surface groundwater that the herders use and the communities use is simply not viable, in volume, or it's not appropriate to use. And so a significant amount of exploration went on to find another body of water, and that was discovered. It's a very large-scale saline aquifer, very deep underground, and we've established the infrastructure to use that. Now, of course, there's a lot of science that goes into that, and understanding what the potential impacts through using that sort of water is, and lots and lots of cooperation with the community to help them appreciate what that means for their livelihoods, particularly the herders who depend on shallow aquifers and bores there to water their animals. And you've seen plenty of pictures of camels already. So that's a very significant challenge for us. It's ongoing. It's not something that will ever stop. It's something we have to constantly manage. And from a mining point of view, my focus is on making sure that we're very efficient with that water. And so far we're recycling about 85% of the water we use, which is great. So in a closed system, and we measure that water balance on a continuous basis. Obviously, the more we can do to increase that, the better. And obviously, the amount of water we use per tonne of ore treated is a key metric. And right now, we're in the top quartile globally, and that's something we want to push further through more technology. So that's the work we can do as miners and applying good technology. The other half of the puzzle, of course, is working with the communities to make sure we monitor the water, we monitor the shallow wells, make sure we're communicating well, and we're actually understanding the impact that we're having across that region. The next one I guess I wanted to talk about is biodiversity, and we can talk about environment in a very general sense. This is an important aspect, and there's been a few quotes, I won't mention names, in the past. Well, it's a desert and what is there to worry about? And of course there is a lot. It's a very sensitive ecosystem. There are some species of animal there, and I've got a picture of the Vella, the Mongolian wild ass, as you might hear them also described, the black-tailed gazelle, I don't have that picture, a number of animals there and birds that are very, very sensitive. And we've spent a lot of time and money starting to understand their environment, the impacts and so on, to the point that the first program ever collaring these animals and tracking their movements and understanding how they're operating in that environment, both the black-tailed gazelle and the Hulan, and that's been done in conjunction with a number of NGOs and expert groups in Mongolia. We've shared that information and learned an awful lot from it about their migratory patterns and so on. Ultimately, this is a place where Rio Tinto standards come to play. Rio Tinto has a commitment to net positive impact, and so what that means is where we have a negative impact, we measure it and understand it, and on the other hand, we do things to offset that and to drive it, as I said, a net positive. Ultimately, we're still very, very early in the stages of understanding the environment and really gathering good data about the impacts that we're having and other changes that are occurring. Of course, we're not the only mining operator in the region. There's a number of coal businesses, there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of other things happening, and we're trying to take a holistic view to understand those impacts. The community, so, of course, establishing a mining operation has a very direct impact. In fact, 11 families that were on the mining lease, 89 if we include those that surround it, and then obviously the whole Hambog Soon, which is the location that we operate out of, some surrounding Sooms, Binovo and Manlai, and then more broadly the AMAG. So there's a big area for us to think about, and there's a number of issues to deal with there. Obviously there's direct impact for those families that are immediately affected through the mining operation, but more broadly, trying to maintain some economic diversity is important, and we've put a huge amount of effort into developing the economics and businesses in the region, and you can see in the chart there the growth in spend from the mine, exponential by any description, and that's been very well received by the community, of course, because it helps them broaden their capacity. They've learned a lot about business. They've brought a tremendous amount, and going to a $30 million spend this year, it means we're not just doing simple things like crafts or uniforms or core boxes. We're now into large-scale contracts, and the capacity that the community's developed is really quite extraordinary to see. Broader than that, community programs, there's a whole lot we've been working on now, right through construction, and these programs are continuing as we get into steady-state operations. These are all well and truly entrenched in the way that Rio Tinto takes on its responsibilities with the community, and there's a set of standards that guide that. But more importantly now, with our focus on project finance for the future of the business, we've completed an ESIA, Environmental Social Impact Assessment, and within that made many, many commitments which are enshrined in that document and tied to our future financing. And they are set at a very, very high standard and include these types of programs. So cultural heritage, the focus on that, both with the communities and some of the experts in Ulaanbaatar. The work on local business development I've already mentioned. The environmental monitoring, pasture land management is another key one, really helping the local community to improve on that. And I'll give you a practical example. Hopefully I'm not stealing Bruce's thunder later today, but he was instrumental in driving an initiative on camel shearing. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, the local community sheared camels with manual shears. It would take about 2 hours to do a camel, and it was probably not that comfortable for the camel. Bruce took an idea, a very simple idea, said, well, why don't we take some electric shears that we use on sheep in Australia and introduce those. He's done that, it's been incredibly successful. Took the time down to about 20 minutes, much more efficient, took a lot more wool off the camel, and just last week or the week before, the team came down for full training, and then now we have a number of certified members from the local community in electric shearing. Social changes, and I won't spend long on this, the impacts obviously in the community, not just physical and economic, but with an influx of people, both seeking employment or other business opportunities, or directly involved in OT, obviously brings a number of other social issues, and that's something we're very aware of and manage very actively. Wherever possible, it's about partnering with the community in particular, the local government and agencies, but of course also holding very high standards for our own employees and contractors. Town development, and this is, early days. The mining town is not something we want to end up with. I mean, while OT will have a long lifetime, more than any of our lifetimes, I'm sure, at some point it will end. And what we don't want to do is start down a path that causes a problem later. And most of the people here will have read about Gove and the challenges there, closing that operation and the impact that has on the community. That's obviously very, very front and centre for us. We don't end up in that position. Shared infrastructure, so obviously with the mining company establishing in the South Gobi where there was nothing but the desert basically, there's an awful lot of infrastructure that's been established. Power to the Soom Centre is an example, so have 24-hour power is a big deal, and that allows a lot of other things. The road infrastructure, a local airport. We've just started commercial flights to the Humboldt Airport, which is just outside of the Soom Centre. And I went and met with the elders on the day. It happened to be Elders Day, and they said that they were so happy. They said, we never thought we'd see this in our lifetime. And that sort of positive impact that they can go and easily get on a flight and see their family elsewhere in Mongolia is an impact that you don't count, you don't measure, but it was very profound for that group. Education and training, so I won't spend long on this, of course, to create a pipeline of talent for our business, for all of our suppliers and the broader economy to support our business means a big commitment in education and training. This has got a massive investment directly from Oyu Tolgoi. But that goes on, and I was just sitting 2 days ago when I was down at the mine site with the team looking at schooling in Hanbog and what the development plan is there. And ultimately my perspective is we need to see a really great school in Hanbog because that will allow us one day to see more and more residential workforce. And thinking about that's not developing people who necessarily work in the mining business, but just people who get great schooling and they can go on to whatever careers they choose. And lastly, closure planning is another key impact we need to consider. While it might be a lifetime away, it is an issue and it is something that we have to plan well ahead for and fund well ahead. So obviously we spend the time and effort to allocate money financially and resources to start that planning very early on. And you can see the sort of time frames are very significant. 5 years implementation, 10 years monitoring, and 40 years ongoing. It's going to, in some ways, mirror the impact period of the mine itself. So look, that's it from me. I kept it short and sharp, and I'll leave it there and look forward to